everybody. Welcome to today's show. My name is Spencer Wells. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have a good one for you, as always. Keep catching you up today, starting with the latest on Gaza and the current genocide that we see happening there. And now the UNRWA chief, coming out and saying what we kind of have all seen with our own eyes and ears through news reports that this famine that is occurring is getting worse by the day, is man-made. Also, we have yet another cringy moment for you out of the State Department. A new DMFI ad, or ally, DMFI is the ally there, is out with an ad trying to undermine the support for the uncommitted movement in Michigan. You may be like, uncommitted to who? Well, uncommitted to Joe Biden, and that's going to come to the test in the Michigan primary tomorrow. It's going to be very, very interesting. Tuesday, I guess, Tuesday the 27th, whenever you're seeing this. Also, a great article from Jacobin, really doing something to the left. Jacobin is at its best when they kind of just theorize on issues, think about new left-wing policy, and things like that. They have this article out by Helen Santoro, Tax Ivy League Endowments and Fund Public Higher Education. Very interesting theory for the deeper problems of college, rather than just going through the same endowment, student loans, tuition being sky high, circle of death that we currently find ourselves in. All right, so with that being said, though, we are starting at the top today with the situation, the genocide going on in Gaza at the moment. 29,782 killed. This is kind of, the lowball estimate here from the Gaza Ministry of Health. I think, the best thing to say at this point to anyone who's still, by the way, just questioning those numbers is the fact that, I agree with you. They're probably wrong. The total number of actual dead is probably way, way higher because, of course, these are people who, just many, many people were hearing reports that they're just putting, their loved ones, their family members who probably all died, multiple of them at a time, in mass graves, not even really bothering to report them because that's just, what you have to do at a certain point to survive. That also, the people under the rubble who, you're not sure if they're going to, 100% sure if they are going to, make it out, but you kind of know in the back of your head that they probably will not. Those aren't added to the death toll, so I think that for sure makes things certainly very, very different from what the Gaza Ministry of Health, some of the really just awful people in the media like to refer to as the Hamas-run Ministry of Health, to just devalue. And this kind of has been a whole central theme of this entire thing, just completely devaluing the dead of the Palestinians, the people who have been killed, referring by Israel, and referring to them, just always trying to downplay the situation. With from the passive voice in the media to the denying of the Hamas run, death toll. Biden saying, "I don't think anyone trusts what Hamas is saying about how many people they died." And to really the Israel desecration of the cemeteries. Like, it is just a constant campaign, even after death, to torment these people and just deny even their death in the first place, which is just every level just evil all the way through. 1 in 6 children, speaking of really just awful tragedies in northern Gaza, is malnourished. This is from a report from UNRWA that was just released following reports of a 2-month-old baby starving to death on Friday. This is, again, from malnutrition. We saw a video, I think I saw it online, of a video of this baby being buried. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for the Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA, said the high risk of malnutrition continues to increase, again, with 1 in 6 children in northern Gaza being severely malnutritioned. Infant death from starvation, Mads Gilbert says, he's a Norwegian physician. He says that the infant death is a direct consequence. It doesn't take a doctor to figure this out. It's a direct consequence of the continuous blocks by Israel on humanitarian aid entering the enclave. This is not a tragedy. It is not man-made. Starvation is being forced upon the people of Gaza by the Israeli occupation forces, Gilbert said, who has more than 30 years of experience working in Gaza hospitals, by the way. He told Al Jazeera it's not some random Norwegian person. Lazzarini, I think Philippe Lazzarini, head of UNRWA, he says that Israel has not allowed food to be delivered since the 25th of January, and that the UN's calls to send food aid have been denied and fallen on deaf ears. Since then, Lazzarini said UNRWA and other UN agencies have warned against the looming famine, appealed for regular humanitarian access, and stated that famine can be averted if more food convoys are allowed into northern Gaza on a regular basis. This is a man-made disaster. The world committed to never let famine happen again. And it is, again, most of the time, just like, we saw in Ireland, for example, and countless other examples, throughout very much recent history, especially in various places in the global south, we have seen just really a lot of these famines being just really man-made. Famine, and it can really still be avoided through just aid, through the international community functioning as it should. But, that is far from what we have seen thus far in this crisis. Aerial photos posted by Al Jazeera Arabic show 2,000 aid trucks piled up on the Egyptian side of Rafah. 2,000 aid trucks. It's normally about 500 a day at pre-war levels. So that is kind of a perspective. I think it was about 83 per day, according to one of the people in the Biden administration. So, which I feel like they wouldn't. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think they just say something that brazenly inaccurate. But you never know. But we need to make sure we have the right access to Gaza from different crossings so that we can actually reach people, whether they're in the north, south, or central areas. Again, we have seen a story of Palestinians being shot waiting for aid by Israeli forces. The very little that's coming in obviously causes a huge rush of people. And, I got news for you. If you think they're going to be, the most well-behaved, mannerly, how can we make, the perfect single-file line? Do you want us to snake it? Should we just go straight out? Like, they're not going to be asking these questions. They're not going to be forming a single-file line. They're going to be rushing for it, and they have absolutely every right to. And if you don't think so, you're just delusional with hate. But, again, this has caused, it's not really this, it's just a broader hatred and just desire of Israelis and consistent behavior, essentially, to kill Palestinians at will. That is what caused them to shoot Palestinians shoot at them, I guess, maybe snipe them as well, as we've seen with children, by the way. Several reports continue surface, again, of Israeli forces targeting Palestinians, waving for humanitarian aid. Most recently, this occurred on Sunday evening. And again, we're seeing no coverage of this, by the way, in the mainstream media, only in places like Wafa, and it's filtering on through places like Mondo Weiss and other good independent media outlets. But again, just like, even from some left-wing outlets, I think they're not just treating this as the absolute scandal. It is just one of the most barbaric things you can do in any sort of, I hesitate to call it a conflict, in any sort of, activity with guns that a country could do. I guess just shooting people waiting for aid is probably one of the most evil. According to Al Jazeera, also 2 fishermen, by the way, were shot dead at the shore of Khan Yunis. Meanwhile, Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has continued planning the Israeli assault on Rafah. Approximately 1.5 million Palestinians are seeking shelter there, saying that if Israel and Hamas, even if they reach a deal, it will delay military operations in Rafah, but they will have to happen at a certain point, saying that any deal will be temporary. Meanwhile, Sami Abu Zuhiri said that Netanyahu's remarks have cast doubt over Israel's willingness to secure a deal. I think, I will say, Hamas, they have their flaws, but they are, I think that's a pretty, obvious observation to make. Netanyahu has shown no interest in making a deal. You could say that the, Hamas conditions that were released were a bit, unrealistic in the first round. But I think, given the situation they're in is a situation that is, very hard, I think, to put from anyone in the West to put their put in their perspective, for them to truly understand. So the U.S. has called on Israel to present a credible plan for protecting civilians, essentially, as we talked about in the last show, just give us enough, juice so we can defend you in the media with, and that is about it that they are going to do. Meanwhile, there is continued fighting in the north, where Yoav Gallant, who has really been leading on this, the Israel defense minister, he has continued to target the Hezbollah, regardless of the situation in Gaza, saying if anyone thinks that when we get a hostage deal and a pause in Gaza, it will alleviate what's going on here, they're wrong, referring to Hezbollah and northern Israel, southern Lebanon. He said, according to Haaretz, he added that Israel would push Hezbollah to retreat from its northern border, either by agreement or by force. Hezbollah and Israel have been exchanging fire since October, and Israel recently made its deepest strike into Lebanon north of Beirut, northwest, I believe. I think the city was called Balak. So hospitals across the Gaza Strip, meanwhile, continue to struggle under Israel's attacks, making it extremely difficult for Palestinian civilians to receive adequate medical care. In northern Gaza, the Palestinian Ministry of Health has said the situation is beyond description as hospitals run out of fuel. Lack of fuel had also devastating consequences for rescue missions in the war-torn area. We continue to see the Palestinian Red Crescent taking, I believe, it was a 48-hour pause. They're one of the most, really the only real ambulance service to absolutely just Laura's work there, rescuing people. They were the people who were the first to try to rescue the 6-year-old girl Henry Job from her, bombed out car before the Israelis killed them and her. So they if they are taking the decision to suspend, just because of the amount of targets on them, all their operations, things must be really serious. While the world's eyes, meanwhile, are on Gaza, Israel is taking the chance to advance the construction of 3,344 new housing units in the occupied West Bank, 350 units in the settlement of Male Adumim, 694 in Arafat, and 300 in Kedar, according to Peace Now. They are significant and expansive projects that will greatly impact the possibility of reaching a two-state solution, especially the plans, and Arafat and Kedar, the Israeli nonprofit, said in a statement. Peace Now is the nonprofit there. Decision to promote thousands of unnecessary and harmful housing units in a settlement is a hasty and irresponsible decision made by an extremist government that has long lost the trust of the people. I think it is not the most evidence-free conclusion to say that Ben-Gvir is getting in as many settlements as he can before the election, but I think it's very, very hard to say when push comes to shove. Are they really going to stop settlements if Benny Gantz gets in there? With the way things are going, with the strength of the settlers, and also really just the underlying essential nature of the settlers to the purpose of the Israeli state, I feel like it's going to be very, very hard for them to stop, let alone reverse some of the construction that they are starting. This is kind of an interesting one here. Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Shataya, this is in the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank side, handed in his resignation to President Mahmoud Abbas at the opening of Monday's government meeting in Ramallah, reports Reuters. Shataya was said he was moved to step down to unprecedented escalation in the occupied West Bank of Jerusalem and the war, genocide, and starvation in the Gaza Strip. It was a very, very, according to Al Jazeera there, it's very, very unclear what, he was actually going for, because it's very strange and vague, because they're just describing what's happening. We know what's happening, but you're still, the leader. Shataya noted that the efforts, this is the interesting part here, there are efforts to make the Palestinian Authority an administrative and security authority without political influence, and the PA will continue to struggle to embody the state on the land of Palestine despite the occupation. I see the next stage and its challenges require new government and political arrangements that take into account the new reality in Gaza and the need for a Palestinian base, a consensus based on Palestinian unity. So not seeming to be, the kind of stepping out of the way for some sort of, reshuffle for, some of the Israeli people have been theorizing that this indicates that the U.S. is putting some sort of pressure to get him out. We will see. That's kind of a time will tell situation, but definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. Meanwhile, a really remarkable situation where a U.S. military service member set himself, he was an Air Force man, set himself on fire in an act of protest against the war in Gaza outside the Israeli embassy in Washington. According to Reuters, the Air Force spokesperson confirmed the incident, which occurred on Sunday afternoon. It was live streamed on Twitch. He really incredibly just, moving, and I feel like very, very powerful for anyone who is, just in any way sympathetic to Palestine. I think if you're really pro-Israel at this point, we've seen some of their actions. I don't know if they're associated with the Israeli government, but it's like some Mossad fan account essentially that is really highly followed. I don't know if they're exactly associated. I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Essentially tweeted, "Oh look, our enemies are killing themselves." So that's just shows the level of humanity you have to support Israel at this point in time, quite clearly. But I think a very, very incredibly just stopping moment, just a moment that makes you think, this is it. The ability to just imagine lighting yourself on fire, to just really lay your life down on the line, to prove that you are not, or just take yourself out of a situation where so much evil is being done. I feel like it definitely requires a certain amount of just cognitive dissonance. Because the way he said it, I think his words put it really, really well. "I will no longer be complicit in genocide," he said. I think the full thing was he said something about this: if you ever wonder what you would do during a genocide, if you ever wonder what you do, during the Holocaust, during the Civil Rights Movement, something like that, this is what you would do. A moment like this is happening now. We need to take, appropriate action. I'm part of this effort. This, not as directly as someone in the IDF, but still pretty directly in the U.S. military. I'm not going to stand for it anymore. And he just goes and does what he does and lights himself on fire. So it's just a absolutely incredibly just whatever. It's very, very moving and very, very just the amount of cognitive dissonance to just go through life kind of knowing the stuff that's going on. It definitely is a certain amount, especially being in the West, and for someone to just really break through that in a way that just kind of hits home, I think, for a lot of people, is a very, very powerful thing. All right. So going on now to our next story, also related to this, we have another just awful scene out of the State Department. Here it is. This you got to kind of listen closely to this one here.
But you have so much leverage over the Israelis, and this is fundamental vision of the president. So you can use all the leverage you want, including weapons that you sell to Israel, to make sure that this plan is at least on the right path for implementation, considering we have short time between now and November.
So one thing I will say about that people often tend to forget is that Israel, like other countries in the region, is a sovereign country that makes its own decisions. The United States does not dictate to Israel what it must do, just as we don't dictate to any country what it must do. We present what we believe are the. We present what we believe are the. Good one, Matt. We present. No, I mean, but come on, yeah. We present.
By the way, that was Matt Lee, who's an AP reporter, who's been challenging the State Department. One of the most aggressive reporters against the State Department, saying, unless you invade them there, if you didn't catch that. So then you just kind of again, it's what's so funny here? It's you're working for the organization that's behind all of these invasions that shape up. It's really kind of a shameless self-promotion. But if you look at the Hidden History podcast, the last season that we did, I mean, it kind of does go through pretty much all the major ones. There's more even that we didn't cover, but it's just that is, and a lot of them are orchestrated in large parts by the State Department, and you're being their mouthpiece, you're being their spokesperson. It's what is it's just so pathetic. Just I don't even know, because I feel like we really haven't had a moment in political history where we have had such just blatantly awful, publicly awful, both in demeanor and both level of cruelness. We have not had them publicly awful, and we also have not had them so accessible to the people on Twitter, on the news, whatever, 24-hour cable. But also we have never had so little power, with both those two things being true. We have at the same time never had so little power to change the course of the situation on an issue like this. I guess we'll listen to the rest of the clip here.
Stand-up hour in the briefing room. We present what we believe are the best proposals to achieve peace and security, and we will continue to do that, but Israel has to make its own decisions, just as every sovereign independent country has to make its own decisions.
What did you say? What did you mean when you just said that they have to take it?
They have to. It doesn't mean that they have to take it in that we can dictate to them. What I meant by they have to take it is we can present all the options in the world. We can't control whether they take it or not.
Okay. So again, it's just good job there for Matt Lee, but just again another incredibly bleak situation, just with those realities of just a situation where, again, just unprecedented access to how bad, just on a level of just doing evil around the world, but also just how just unpleasant they are in terms of public and just openly contemptuous of the people, but also at the same time you just have no power to, through any sort of democracy, again, on this issue at least, change the course of the situation. All right, so going a little bit more in the kind of the U.S. political scheme, we have anti-war Michiganders this year in The Intercept banding together in the crucial swing state to urge fellow voters to choose uncommitted. This is the slot on the Democratic Party primary ballot next week, with the aim of getting presidential. Well, next week now is, I guess, Tuesday, which is either when you're listening to this most likely, but it's not exactly when it'll be released in U.S. time. But with the aim of getting President Joe Biden to shift his stance for unwavering support for Israel's deadly assault on the Gaza Strip. So now a centrist Democratic pro-Israel group is running an ad campaign in the state to persuade Michiganders to be vocal in their support of Biden and tick the box next to his name on the primary ballot. The ad campaign is the latest effort that mounted by you could play like almost the Darth Vader music here. Democratic Majority for Israel, which is closely aligned with the right-leaning AIPAC. Hopefully, people listening to this know what AIPAC is at this point. DMFI, one of the most effective spenders against left-wing representatives. But it'd be interesting to see what they do. Let's see. This is what they put in on Michigan. This is the ad here. We'll react. Be interesting to see what they got. Elections, it says, okay, it just adds, elections are the bedrock of our democracy. And just to say, elections matter, stand up against Trump, don't be uncommitted, vote Biden. That's what it says. It's like kind of, I guess, like a quick 15-second, just, I don't know, for maybe like your phone when you're scrolling through Instagram or something. Like, it was not a very serious kind of narrative ad. But, it definitely does. It's going to be interesting to see that they're kind of plastering this everywhere. Not really getting into this situation too late, because really the momentum on this has only really gained steam in the last 2-3 weeks or so. So it's taken a moment, of course, for them to trickle into the Israel lobby and saying, hey, maybe we should do something about this. Putting the ad buy down takes a bit of time in a relatively short time frame. But it really has been, I think, two interesting situations. Two quick points would make on this situation is very, very interesting and is indicative of a kind of microcosm of how bad the situation could be for the Democratic base. Because if you look at, it's very interesting to see the Democratic state House or state Senate members that have represented that have endorsed the uncommitted position, and it's been people essentially all over Detroit. So you got Muslims, kind of representatives of Muslim seats, like Rashid Tlaib probably being the biggest at the U.S. House level. But you got, the mayor of Dearborn, obviously that's going to be just on a political level, you're going to have people probably the most discussed and also the most personally tied to what's going on there, but also all throughout, the African-American parts of Detroit, throughout the parts where you kind of have the young kind of college age or fresh out of college kids, of all races, but, especially white as well. We saw a Trump +4 Democratic representative just south of Detroit come out and say, party lines, genocide transcends party lines. I'm voting uncommitted on Tuesday, with a picture of her ballot voting uncommitted. Like, it's a, pretty solid stance, and you have all these people coming out and some really remarkable comments on the state level saying just like, we cannot put up with this anymore, and even Debbie Stabenow, I think, she was the current senator. This really did catch my eye. Debbie Stabenow, I want to say her name is, senators are just like really slip under the radar. They're not very relevant, but at least in the just general, just the general kind of national conversation. But she had something interesting to say. Okay, I think I may have made this up or gotten fooled by some sort of parody or something because I'm not able to find it again. But so I might have fallen for something on that. But we have seen, even Debbie Dingell, I guess. I'll give you another Debbie, who is, I believe she's in the House or Senate, longtime Michigan representative. Somebody just saying flat out, the community is very angry right now. People are talking about this very, very seriously. And you could just tell, based on some of the political language, it is getting pretty serious. Even Beto O'Rourke was kind of crazy coming out and endorsing that. Andy Levin, former Democrat from Michigan, who was previously targeted and unseated by the Democratic Majority for Israel, supporting the uncommitted effort, saying you're not going to win unless he wants Biden to win. He's openly saying it. I'm going to vote for Biden. I want Biden to win, but we have to give him a wake-up call with this uncommitted vote. And really the second point is it's going to be a real test nationally is how much will Biden fall, how much will he get hit, and how will they take this seriously enough to in some way change course and kind of extrapolate it in terms of the broader political picture, or they'll just say, oh, just throw out one of the most important swing states, whatever, it's no big deal. I honestly would bet on the latter, unfortunately, to say. All right, we're going to quickly transition and do kind of a hard transition to our next story here. This is in Jacobin. Within a 1 mile radius in Cambridge, Massachusetts, sit Harvard University and the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, academic institutions that together boast $74 billion in endowment funds. Based on the size of these rainy day funds alone, the two universities, with a combined student body of 37,000, have enough wealth to rival Ghana, with a population of 35 million. The kicker, these private universities are educational institutions, meaning that for most of their history, they have been exempt for federal and state income taxes. Massachusetts lawmakers want to change that. State legislators are considering a groundbreaking bill that would impose a 2.5% annual tax on private colleges and university endowments that are larger than $1 billion. The resulting $2.5 billion raised each year would be more than enough to cover the tuition of every undergraduate student currently attending public colleges and universities in the state. How about that? I doubt they would, funnel it directly into the tuition because that would just be too good to be true. But I think, with the core of very solid, left wing, and a lot of these people, by the way, who are probably pushing this, I'd be willing to bet are the representatives of the communities that these districts are, that these universities are in the state house. So I think that's pretty telling about the impact that they've made on the community, economically, socially, all that stuff that people they've pushed out, the way the communities have changed, property prices. It's a really big deal. But it is it is very, very telling that these are the people who are really pushing it and leading the effort. But the effort, builds on a 2017 federal tax on universities' investment incomes and offers a bold new way to tackle elite universities' hoarding of wealth and an increased amount which is being invested in private equity. And again, if you get some of these tax revenues, it's like, you can make the gym a little nicer. You could make the classrooms better. You can make, lower the tuition costs, in general, and make public college just a better option, and thus already draining the massively overinflated power of private college and their ability to charge so much money for tuition. So the Massachusetts legislation reflects a profound misunderstanding regarding what endowment is and what it is used for, said Sonia Hagopian. Here comes the lobby group, name here, get ready for it, Vice President of Communications at the Association of Independent Colleges and Universities in Massachusetts, which is a lobbying group for private colleges in the state. What it proposes is likely unconstitutional and would undermine the fiscal health of the higher education sector that is crucial to the state's economy and student success. But proponents of the new tax efforts say it would force these schools to pay their wealth forward. The gross wealth accumulation is not okay, said Henry Morgan, a college student executive director of Public Higher Education Network in Massachusetts, a nonprofit advocacy group. While Morgan is attending, again, it's $1 billion here. It's not going to really affect all of these schools. This guy, Henry Morgan, he's attending Hampshire College, which is not big enough for the bill. He argues schools need to pay their fair share to the community. This month, the tax bill called the Act to Support Educational Opportunity for All was sent to the state's House Committee on Revenue, which has until April 30th to make a decision on the bill. Definitely something to follow, especially in the Massachusetts scene, and they really do have a kind of great history about how it started and why it would be good in the kind of the rest of this article. But that's all the time we have for today. And it really is a cool idea and a great article to see in Jacobin as they kind of push for, reimagining, what a better world will look like with kind of interesting new policy ideas. All right. This has been your News Flash. Thank you so much.